After climbing over a high slope, by the moonlight shining from the sky, Wenjie finally saw the two people, who were talking clearly. One of them was tall and thin. Although he was wearing prison clothes, he still couldn't hide the elegance and unrestrained air that emanated from him. It was none other than the missing Master Yun. Opposite him was a graceful woman, wearing a light blue cloak. The woman had a white veil covering her face, leaving only her eyes exposed. Even in the hazy moonlight, her phoenix-like eyes were as clear as stars, faintly revealing a charming and affectionate glow. The two of them were less than 10 feet apart, almost within reach, yet they stubbornly maintained this final distance. "Seeing you, brother," the woman let out a soft sigh. "I never expected that you would abandon your life of luxury and hide in this labor camp, so far away from the Central Plains. It took me so much effort to find you. It's my fault." Master Yun also sounded downcast. "I remember that Junior's sister has always been pampered and couldn't bear the slightest hardship. Yet you came to this desolate and remote wasteland to look for me. I, Yun Xiaofeng, am truly touched. To be able to see Junior's sister again today, I have nothing else to ask for in this life." The woman said in a bitter tone, "Senior brother, when did we start being so polite to each other? After not seeing each other for a few years, have we become so estranged? I remember that in the past you always called me Erao." "Erao." Master Yun's voice was hoarse, and his emotions were stirred. It seemed that he could hardly control himself. "Xiao Fen." The woman's eyes sparkled as she slowly stretched out a delicate hand towards Master Yun. "Hold Ao in your arms again." Master Yun trembled all over and couldn't help reaching out to hold the woman's hand. The distance between them grew closer and closer until they finally hugged each other tightly, as if they were one. Wenjie felt embarrassed to peek any longer and quickly shrank back behind the windward rocks, wondering whether he should leave quietly to avoid embarrassing Master Yun. After waiting for a while, Wenjie took another peek at the two of them. He saw that their postures remained unchanged, and they were still quietly hugging each other. Suddenly, he felt a bit strange. Looking closely, he noticed that the bodies of the two people embracing each other were trembling slightly. If it weren't for Master Yun's heavy, bull-like panting, he would have mistaken this trembling for a natural reaction of emotional excitement. "Ah!" the two of them suddenly cried out in unison, and quickly separated. The woman swayed as if she was about to fall, and a touch of bright red suddenly seeped out from the corner of her lips, spreading on the white veil covering her face, looking glaringly red. Master Yun's face turned deathly pale, and his beard and hair trembled slightly. After standing still for a while, Master Yun gasped, "Rao, I never expected that you would have mastered the bone-eroding and soul-destroying skill. Unfortunately, it still couldn't defeat your eternal elegance and romance," the woman said with a regretful smile, as she tied up her slightly disheveled hair at the temples. "Senior brother, don't blame Rao. Although Rao knows that you have sincere feelings for me, unfortunately, my heart has already been occupied by another person. If he wants me to live, I will live. If he wants me to die, I will die. When he asked me to take your life, I agreed without hesitation. Although I know it's really unfair to you, senior brother, I can't help myself. I can only hope to repay your deep affection in the next life. It's a pity that you won't understand this kind of feeling in my heart, senior brother." "I understand." Master Yun hung his head in pain and sighed sadly. "I, Yun Xiaofeng, am unworthy of being the master of the Qianmen sect. After all, I'm still not as good as that guy. He's the real Qianmen hero of a generation. Since senior brother understands the feelings in Rao's heart, why didn't you just fall asleep comfortably in Rao's arms forever just now?" The woman smiled charmingly. "It seems that senior brother's feelings for Rao still haven't reached the point of being willing to sacrifice your life. This makes Rao feel quite disappointed." Master Yun smiled bitterly and slowly stretched out his hand towards the woman. "Rao, let me experience your bone-eroding and soul-destroying skill one more time. Then I will have no regrets even if I die." "Senior brother, you're lying to me again?" The woman suddenly jumped back a few steps and giggled. I didn't expect that you would use the Qianmen skills on Ao. I won't be fooled again. After saying that, the woman's figure flickered, and in the blink of an eye, she was dozens of feet away. Her delicate and mischievous voice came from afar, or I will make sure you die comfortably, but it'll have to wait until next time. When the woman's figure completely disappeared into the vast night, Master Yun swayed and slowly collapsed to the ground. Wenjia quickly came out from his hiding place and helped Master Yun up. He saw that Master Yun's face was as pale as death and blood was gushing out of his mouth, soaking his clothes in an instant. Master Wenjia was so flustered that he didn't know what to do. What's wrong with you? I'm done for. Master Yun looked up at the sky sadly and murmured with a sigh. I, Yun Xiaofen, am unworthy of being the master of the Qianmen sect. In the end, I still couldn't overcome the hurdle of love. I knew that Ao's heart was as hard as iron towards me, but I still couldn't help but rush towards it like a moth to a flame. Finally, I was hurt by her bone-eroding and soul-destroying skill. If it weren't for her having some out towards me, my life's reputation would have been completely ruined on the spot. Master, don't be discouraged. Wenjia hurriedly unbuttoned Yun Xiaofeng's clothes and fumbled in his arms for the medicine bottle and a flea. Don't you have the miraculous medicine for healing? Quickly tell me which one it is. Don't waste your efforts. Yun Xiaofeng smiled bitterly. There's no omnipotent panacea in this world. I know my own injuries best. Master, don't be sad. I've been defeated by that guy again and again, forced to linger on in this remote and wild place. I've long lost interest in life. Now that I can die under Ao's bone-eroding and soul-destroying skill, it's also a kind of relief. It's just a pity that I can't carefully cultivate you anymore. Master, who is he? Wenjia's eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. You don't even think about avenging me. You're no match for him at all. A glint of envy and admiration flashed in Master Yun's eyes. He's my junior brother, but his scheming and strategies are far superior to mine, as the master of the sect. It's all my fault that I used to be addicted to the trifles of martial arts in the past. Although I've cultivated excellent martial arts skills, it distracted my focus on the real secret skills of our sect. Unlike him, who looked down on martial arts, and was obsessed with wisdom and strategies, and painstakingly studied the weaknesses of human nature. Just think about how clever and proud Ao is, yet she's so devoted to him, and couldn't bear to go against him even a little bit. It can be seen how solely he has grasped and toyed with human nature. Although I will eventually die at his hands, I still have to admire him. He's the real Qianmen hero of a generation. Who is he exactly? Why has he been relentlessly chasing and killing you, even not sparing you in this remote and wild place? Wenjia pressed on. Master Yun smiled bitterly. Hai's original name is Jin Xiang, but probably few people know this name, except me and Junior's sister. Then he pointed to his bosom. After this, he won't be reconciled until he gets it. What is it? At Jin Xiaofeng's indication, Wenjia took out a long and square package from his bosom, unwrapped the brocade handkerchief, and for familiar characters immediately caught his eye. The secret canon of Qianmen, which is said to be written by you the Great, the founder of the Qianmen. With it one can plot for the world. A glint of light shone in Master Yun's eyes. It has been passed down from generation to generation by the masters of the Qianmen sect. Many predecessors of the Qianmen have used it to make waves in history and change dynasties. Unfortunately, by the time it reached my generation, its secrets have been lost in the passage of time. I've studied it hard all my life, but still couldn't figure out its mysteries. I will have to regret it for the rest of my life. Wenjia opened a page casually with some doubts. The preface that had left a deep impression on him immediately came into view. Just as he was about to turn another page, he heard Master Yun shout harshly, "Those who presumptuously read the secret canon of Qianmen will have their eyes gouged out and tongues cut off." Wenjia was startled and quickly closed the sheepskin booklet. Then he saw Yun Xiaofeng take off a dull and old white jade thumb ring from his thumb and hold it in front of Luo Wenjie. Luo Wenjie, a disciple of the Qian men, kneeled down. Luo Wenjie knelt down as he was told, feeling puzzled. He saw a solemnity on Yun Xiaofeng's ashen face that he had never seen before. Yun Xiaofeng, the 131st generation master of the Qian men sect, now pass on the secret canon of Qian men and the fluorite ring, which represent the identity of the master of the Qian men sect. To disciple Luo Wenjie. From now on you were the 132nd generation master of the Qian men sect. Luo Wenjie was quite surprised. I'm stupid and dull. I'm afraid I'm not worthy of this important responsibility. Stop giving me these insincere excuses, Master Yun glared at Luo Wenjie unhappily. Although you're not yet a master of the Qian men, I know your potential. Our sect doesn't inherit based on loyalty. The position of the master has always been held by the capable. When you accept this thumb ring, you won't get a great power out of thin air. On the contrary, you become the target of everyone's attacks. If you can't subdue your fellow sect members with your own means, you won't be able to hold the position of the master for long. If that's the case, you might as well give this secret canon and the thumb ring to Jin Xiang right now, and let me die with regret. Although Luo Wenjie didn't want to be the master, he also didn't want it to fall into the hands of the traitor who killed his master. After a moment of hesitation, he resolutely took the thumb ring. Your disciple accepts the order, and will definitely not let you die with regret. Master Yun nodded with satisfaction, and suddenly pushed Luo Wenjie away. You must leave here quickly, since I could find this place, there must be more than just around here. She'll definitely come back before dawn. You mustn't let her discover the relationship between you and me. Before you become a real master of the Qian men, don't let them know of your existence. I hope you'll become a Qian men hero, instead of an ordinary hero. As a Qian men hero, you can give up anything, but never your own life. Remember this? A look of hesitation flashed across Luo Wenjie's face. But how can I escape from here? Master Yun gasped. The local prison warden, Yun Luoan, once received my guidance on how to safely take the court's wealth for himself. He has a weakness in my hands. Take this thumb ring to see him. As long as he doesn't know my whereabouts, he won't dare to make things difficult for you, and will surely let you leave safely. Your disciple remembers, Luo Wenjie quickly said. Master Yun added, you don't know martial arts. This is your weakness, but also your strength. There are countless martial arts in the world. For many profound martial arts, even if one spends a lifetime on them, it's hard to reach their highest levels. Instead of wasting energy on martial arts, it's better to study the secret skills of our sect carefully, and make the masters of martial arts in the world work for you. After all, a person's energy is limited. Even if one spends a lifetime, one may not be able to master several profound martial arts. But a person's wisdom is limitless. As long as it's used properly, you can make all the martial arts masters in the world serve you. However, if you want to know both yourself and your opponents, you cannot know martial arts, but you can't be ignorant of martial arts. The Lanya Pavilion of the Murong family, the Sutra storage building of the Shaolin Temple, and the Netherworld Paradise of the Demon Sect all collect the secrets of various sects. As long as you can obtain one of them, you'll be able to understand 80 to 90% of the martial arts in the world. How can I subdue martial arts masters? Your disciple is stupid and dull, and still needs your guidance, Master, Luo Wenjie asked. Everyone has weaknesses, and the unruly martial arts masters are no exception. Master Yun took a breath. These weaknesses may be loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, righteousness, profit, power, and so on. As long as you treat them differently and make good use of them, you will surely achieve remarkable results. Just like lions and tigers, fierce beasts also have weaknesses, but only those who are smarter than them can be good at using and seizing these weaknesses. Luo Wenjie still had many questions in his heart. However, seeing that Master Yun's face was becoming increasingly ashen, he didn't dare to ask any more. He just clasped his hands and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Master. Your disciple has learned a lot. After finishing the important matter, Master Yun fell back wearily. Luo Wenjie hurriedly supported him. He saw a trace of kindness flash in Master Yun's dim eyes. Looking at Luo Wenjie with a complicated look, he murmured with a sigh, "It's a pity that my son Yun Xiang died early. If he was still alive, he would be as old as you are now." Seeing that the vitality in Master Yun's eyes was gradually fading away, Luo Wenjie felt a sharp pain in his heart. Remembering all the kindness and earnest teachings that Master Yun had given him, Luo Wenjie couldn't help but kneel down on the ground. "Master, if you don't mind, just regard your disciple as your son. I'm willing to take the name of your deceased son and change my name to Yun Xiang from now on." Really, a glint of surprise suddenly shone in Master Yun's dying eyes. "Father, please accept your son Yun Xiang's obeisance." Luo Wenjie turned over and knelt down, kowtowing respectfully 3 times. At this moment, in Luo Wenjie's mind, with Master Yun's life-saving grace and enlightening virtue, he could be regarded as his second father. This call of father came from the bottom of his heart, and was extremely sincere. Xian, Master Yun excitedly grasped Luo Wenjie's hand, with tears shining in his eyes. "Father," Luo Wenjie held Master Yun's gradually cooling hand, suppressed the sadness in his heart, and forced a smile. Master Yun's lips moved slightly, his tightly clasped hands slowly loosened, his eyes gradually dimmed, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Finally, he passed away with a smile. Holding Master Yun's gradually cooling body tightly in his arms, Luo Wenjie burst into tears. At this moment, in his mind, compared with his biological father, who was addicted to oring and gambling, Master Yun was much more worthy of respect. Since leaving Yanzhou, he had never felt such care, and had never met a benefactor like Master Yun again. Highest death made Luo Wenjie truly experience the pain of losing his father. After an unknown amount of time, Luo Wenjie finally let go of Master Yun. Remembering Master Yun's last instructions before his death, he immediately carried his body on his back and hurried to the mine shaft that had been filled in during the day. There was a big pit that he had dug just now, which was just right for burying Master Yun. Once the mine shaft was filled, it was declared abandoned, and no one would come to disturb Master Yun anymore. And the newly filled soil wouldn't attract the attention of others either. The sky in the east began to turn pale. Luo Wenjie bowed 3 times towards Master Yun's burial place, and silently said in his heart, "From now on, the well-behaved Luo Wenjie is considered dead. From this moment on, I'm Yun Xiang, the Yun Xiang of the Qian men, who regards loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, righteousness, propriety, integrity, and the laws of the Ming dynasty as nothing." Finally, he took one last look at Master Yun's grave, and resolutely turned around, and walked down the mountain with big steps. As soon as he arrived outside the prison cell, he saw Yan Luoan coming up with several prison guards. Without saying a word, they pushed him to the ground. Several prison guards angrily cursed, "You brat! How dare you try to escape from prison?" I want to see the prison warden." Luo Wenjie raised the thumb ring and shouted desperately. Yan Luoan's face changed drastically when he saw it. He quickly asked the guards to take Luo Wenjie to the hall. After dismissing the irrelevant people, he asked impassively, "Why is Master Yun missing? How did his thumb ring end up in your hands?" "Master Yun encountered some trouble, and left here temporarily to avoid it. He asked me to bring this thumb ring to see you, sir, and hoped that you could do him a favor, and let me and a few brothers leave safely," Luo Wenjie said calmly. "Humph, isn't Master Yun asking too much?" Yan Luoan looked at Luo Wenjie with an uncertain expression in his eyes. "I can let you go, but only you alone." Luo Wenjie raised the thumb ring in his hand. "If I can't leave with my 3 surviving brothers, I won't leave by myself. If I don't leave here within 3 days, Master Yun will know about it." Yan Luoan pondered for a long while, then asked coldly, "What are the names of your 3 brothers?" After Luo Wenjie told him the names of the 3 people, Yan Luoan immediately summoned a prison guard, and whispered to him for a moment. The prison guard nodded in understanding and left. Soon he came back to the hall carrying a hemp sack, and nodded at Yan Luoan, then threw the sack onto the hall. You can take your 3 brothers and leave now, and Luoan pointed at the sack, and gave a sinister smile. Blood was seeping out of the sack. Luo Wenjie tremblingly opened it, and saw that inside the sack was 3 bloody and mutilated human heads. Luo Wenjie glared at Yan Luoan, wishing he could rush up and fight him to the death. But there was still a shred of reason in his heart constantly warning him, calm down. You must stay calm, don't fall into the other's trap. After taking a few deep breaths, he gradually calmed down. He understood that Yan Luoan actually didn't want to let him go, but he didn't dare to ignore Master Yan's token, so he killed his brothers to hold him back. As long as he caused trouble because of his brothers' tragic deaths, it would be just what Yan Luoan wanted. Even if Master Yun blamed him later, he would have an excuse to fend it off. Thinking of this, Luo Wenjie kowtowed 3 times towards the sack, and silently said in his heart, I won't forget your blood debt. I will avenge you one day. After kowtowing, Luo Wenjie wiped away his tears, calmly stood up and bowed from a distance to Yan Luoan. Thank you for your kindness, sir. I can finally leave without any concerns. Yan Luoan looked at Luo Wenjie in surprise. After hesitating for a moment, he still waved his hand at the prison guard beside him, let him go. Watching Luo Wenjie leave, a faint sneer appeared at the corner of Yan Luoan's mouth, and he murmured to himself, it won't be that easy to escape from me. Luoqi Town was a transportation hub from Qinghai to Ganzhou and Shaanxi. Although it wasn't a big place, there were many people coming and going, and it was very lively. With more merchants traveling back and forth, a new profession naturally emerged, swordsmen. They were hired temporarily by others, working as bodyguards or escorts, and occasionally were hired to do some deeds like killing and robbing. In this wild town, as long as you were willing to pay, you could always buy what you wanted, including the lives of your enemies. The largest tavern in the town, Xiangting, was a gathering place for swordsmen and merchants. At this moment, in a corner of the tavern, more than a dozen swordsmen were having an intense gambling session beside the gambling table, shouting loudly from time to time. In the middle, a young swordsman with a rough face and a knife scar on his forehead was sipping wine, while nervously staring at the dice in the bowl. Looking at the silver in front of him, there wasn't much left. A man in a hurry squeezed into the crowd and asked the young swordsman in a low voice, "Excuse me, sir. Are you the famous Jin Shiliang? Can't you see I'm gambling?" The swordsman glared at the other person dissatisfied. Seeing the other person retreat nervously, he then turned to the gambling table and shouted, "Three of a kind. 3 of a kind, damn it, another low roll. It's so damn strange. I don't believe in this bad luck. Let's go again." In just the time it took to have a meal, the young swordsman lost all his money and left the gambling table with a dejected look. The man just now quickly went up to him and clasped his hands and asked, "Excuse me, sir. Are you Jin Shiliang?" "Yes," the swordsman glanced at him. "What do you want?" The man pushed a brocade pouch in front of Jin Shiliang. "I'm ordered by my master to bring some gambling money for you, sir." "Do you know my price?" the swordsman asked coldly. The man smiled ingratiatingly and said, "Everyone knows that Jin Shiliang in Luoqi Town never charges less than 10 taels of gold." The merchants traveling on this road all knew that this young man with a knife scar on his face was the best swordsman in Luoqi Town. However, his asking price was really high, at least 10 taels of gold each time, so he got the nickname Jin Shiliang and was famous far and wide. It's just that he was addicted to gambling and drinking. Although he earned a lot of money, he spent it all on the gambling table and the wine table, so he was always as down and out as a vagabond. Seeing the man's respectful look, Jin Shiliang's expression softened a little. "In that case, what does your master want me to do?" "Kill someone." Jin Shiliang laughed. "Killing someone costs at least 50 taels, depending on the target." "The target is an unknown and frail scholar," the man said, as he unfolded the portrait in his hand. "He doesn't know martial arts and has no background. There won't be any trouble in killing him. The only requirement is that you have to do it more than 100 miles away from Luoqi Town and disguise his death as an accident." Is there a problem? Jin Shiliang looked a bit puzzled. Spending 50 taels of gold to kill such a person, isn't your master being a bit too extravagant? To ensure everything goes smoothly, it's reasonable to spend a bit more money. The man rolled up the portrait and pushed it along with the deposit in front of Jin Shiliang. Among the many swordsmen in Luoqi Town, only you, sir, have never failed a task. So my master specifically asked for you? I wonder if you're willing to take this job. Jin Shiliang drained the last bit of wine in the pot in one gulp and asked, where is this person? He'll pass through here in a few days. The man got up to take his leave. I will be waiting for your good news at the Inn across the street. On the very next day after Jin Shiliang accepted the deposit, a young man with a lonely look came to Luoqi Town. Jin Shiliang, who was squatting on the street, seemingly dozing off boredly, recognized at a glance that he was exactly the target worth 50 taels of gold in the portrait. However, no matter how Jin Shiliang looked at him, he seemed like an ordinary pauper. The total value of everything on him probably wasn't even worth 5 taels of silver. Jin Shiliang couldn't figure out why someone would pay 50 taels of gold to have him killed. After following him for the streets, Jin Shiliang finally realized that this young man was indeed a bit different. He did everything in an orderly and calm manner. Although he was a pauper, there was a pride and confidence in his bones that a pauper usually didn't have. Jin Shiliang watched him turn into a pawnshop. When he came out, his outer coat was gone. Presumably, he had exchanged it for some money for an emergency. Jin Shiliang followed him from a distance. He saw that the other person stopped in front of a street gambling stand, watched for the time it took to have a meal, and finally placed a bet. Surprisingly, he won. Jin Shiliang curiously walked closer to observe, and found that he was very cautious. Only after the gambling stand had opened for a dozen rounds did he place a small bet. However, Jin Shiliang was astonished to find that this kid had amazingly good luck. He placed 7 or 8 bets in total, and won every single one. This gambling stand was the common street game of betting on odd or even numbers. The owner of the stand would throw a handful of melon seeds onto the plate, and immediately cover it with a bowl, and then let the gamblers bet on odd or even. After everyone had placed their bets, the owner would lift the bowl and count the number of melon seeds to see if it was odd or even. If the bet was correct, the gambler won and the owner would pay out an equivalent amount of money. Otherwise, the gambler lost. Among the gamblers around, some won and some lost, but only this calm young man won every single time. Jin Shiliang found that the owner of the stand didn't move his hands very quickly. With his sharp eyes, he could almost see the number of melon seeds every time. However, what puzzled him was that the result of odd or even didn't always match what he saw with his own eyes. After a few rounds, he couldn't help but doubt himself, and couldn't resist placing a few bets himself, but he lost every time. Looking at that kid again, he won a few more times, without showing any emotion. Jin Shiliang couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he sought. Just as he wanted to take a closer look, the other person had already left the gambling stand, and turned into the only gambling house in the town. In the noisy gambling house, he was still cautious, when placing bets and won every time he bet. In just a short while, he quietly won 5 or 6 taels of silver. Then he went to the pawnshop to redeem his old robe, and bought a lot of food and water. It wasn't until it was almost evening that he settled down in a cheap inn in the town. To ensure everything was foolproof, Jin Shiliang also checked into the room next to his. Early the next morning, he saw the young man leave the town and continue eastward. Jin Shiliang quietly followed him, patiently following the target out of Luoqi Town, and arriving at the deserted prairie 100 miles away. Jin Shiliang finally caught up with him and quietly launched an attack on him. Looking at the young man, who fell to the ground with a thud, Jin Shiliang sat down beside him cross-legged. The young man was lying on his back on the ground, seemingly not caring about what had happened to him. Instead, he was looking at Jin Shiliang with great interest. Jin Shiliang remembered that he hadn't tapped the young man's mute acupoint, but the young man didn't say a word, neither begging for mercy, nor calling for help. Jin Shiliang was a bit curious and couldn't help asking, "Do you know what I'm going to do?" "Probably kill me." A faint smile appeared at the corner of the young man's mouth. "I'm just a bit surprised. Why haven't you done it yet?" "I want your death to look like an accident." Jin Shiliang showed a smile like a cat playing with a mouse. "If a person doesn't eat or drink, he'll probably die in about 2 or 3 days, right?" The young man blinked as if in agreement. "Without water, a person can survive for at most 3 days. Aren't you afraid? Don't you want to beg for mercy?" Jin Shiliang was surprised at the young man's calmness. "Will being afraid make me live longer? Is begging for mercy useful?" The young man seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Of course not. Jin Shiliang suddenly realized that this kid was really interesting. Chatting with him could kill the boring time of these 3 days. "What's your name?" This was the first time he had asked the target's name. "Yun Xiang, and you?" Although the young man was restrained by the echo points and lying on his back on the ground in a rather ungraceful posture, his expression was as casual and natural as chatting with an old friend. "My original name is Jin Biao, but others call me Jin Shiliang." The swordsman sighed. "Don't blame me. I'm just doing this job for the money. Someone paid 50 taels of gold to buy your life. If you want to complain, go to the king of hell." 50 taels of gold. Yun Xiang was a bit surprised. "I didn't expect that I was worth so much. If I had known this earlier, I might as well have sold my life to that person. I also think it's strange, no matter how I look at you, you don't seem to be worth that much." Jin Shiliang laughed. "Did you seduce someone's wife or rape someone's sister? Otherwise, why would others be willing to spend so much money to take your life?" A bitter smile appeared on Yun Xiang's face. "If I had enjoyed such good fortune with women, I would die happily." "I don't think you look like a rapist." Jin Shiliang wasn't interested in the reason why his employer wanted to kill someone. If he had to guess the reason for every target he killed, he would be exhausted. After working hard for half a day, he felt a bit hungry. He took out dried meat and strong liquor from the saddle and started eating and drinking, seeing Yun Xiang licking his lips. "So Stully," he comforted him, "just bear with it. It might be a bit uncomfortable at first, but you'll get used to it slowly." "Hey, big brother," Yun Xiang protested loudly, "when you're enjoying good food and drink, could you please go a bit farther away? Don't you know that watching others eat and drink while you're hungry is the most painful thing in the world?" "No way, I have to keep an eye on you to prevent you from playing any tricks," Jin Shiliang said. Then he suddenly remembered something and asked embarrassedly, "By the way, I noticed that whether you were at the small gambling stand on the street or in the gambling house in the town, you always won every bet without ever failing. Is there any trick to it?" A sly look flashed in Yun Xiang's eyes. "Of course there's a trick, but don't ask me. It's useless even if you do anyway. I'm on the verge of death. Why should I tell you this unique skill?" "What kind of unique skill is that?" Jin Shiliang curled his lips contemptuously. However, recalling the magic of the other person winning every bet, he couldn't help asking, "What's the trick exactly?" "As long as you tell me, I might let you live a bit longer. How about exchanging a piece of dried meat and a pot of good wine for your trick?" Yun Xian laughed. "Although people's personalities vary greatly, they can generally be divided into 9 types. One of these types of people is stubborn and obstinate. Once they set a goal, they won't stop until they achieve it. People with this personality usually can become top figures in various fields. However, they are often harmed by their stubborn personalities and do some stupid and unreasonable things in the eyes of ordinary people. From my observation, Brother Jin is such a person." "What do you mean?" Jin Shiliang was a bit confused. "Once you become curious about my trick, you definitely won't leave with the mystery unresolved. As long as I don't tell you the secret, you'll keep increasing the price and try every means to uncover it," Yun Xiang said with a smile. "Regrettably, I'm also this kind of person. Once I've made up my mind, no matter how high a price you offer, I won't tell you. I just want to make you be tortured by this secret for the rest of your life." "Humph, I don't believe you can be more stubborn than me, Jin Shiliang." Jin Shiliang threw down the good wine and dried meat. He was famous for his obstinacy, and because of this, he had become the swordsman with the best sword skills and the worst temper in the town. He didn't believe that he couldn't make this young man give in. In fact, he was just a bit curious about the secret of the other person winning every bet and didn't really want to learn this trick to gamble. However, now the other person's words had stood up his stubborn temper. He put the water, good wine, and dried meat in front of Yun Xiang and said harshly, I will exchange these for the secret of your always winning every bet even if you don't agree now. After starving you for 3 days, I don't believe you still won't agree. 3 days passed quickly. Yun Xiang's lips were chapped and blood clots had formed, and his face was covered with a look of ashen defeat. If this continued, he would surely die of thirst. Jin Shiliang finally lost his patience. He grabbed Yun Xiang by the neck and shouted, the water, food, good wine, and delicious dishes are right in front of you anyway. You can't escape death. Why not tell that secret and exchange it for these foods, to live a few more days? Yun Xiang managed to force a smile at the corner of his mouth, but then closed his eyes and didn't answer. Jin Shiliang forcibly pried open Yun Xiang's mouth and poured water into it. When the other person had regained a bit of vitality, he said hatefully, all right. You've got guts. I've never met a tough guy like you before. It's a pity that you met Jin Shiliang. If I can't get this secret out of your mouth, I will write the 3 characters Jin Shiliang backwards from now on. As he said this, he put his hand on Yun Xiang's back, and his internal energy penetrated into Yun Xiang's body. He actually used the 10,000 ants biting the heart technique. Yun Xiang felt as if thousands of ants were crawling into his body, his internal organs, the vital parts of his body, and even his bones all itched. After a while, the itchy feeling turned into a stabbing pain, and there was no part of his body that didn't itch or hurt. This pain was far beyond any torture he had endured in the past. With a shrill scream, he fainted. The cold water splashed on his face, and Yun Xiang slowly regained consciousness. Although his mind had become a bit blurred due to hunger and pain, he still held on to the last bit of his sanity, and kept telling himself in his heart, persist, you must persist. If you want to survive, you must persevere to the end. Jin Shiliang looked at Yun Xiang, who had no ability to resist at all, panting heavily. Suddenly, a sense of frustration welled up in his heart. He couldn't figure out what material this kid's nerves were made of. Although he could easily destroy him physically, he could never break him spiritually. He said helplessly, you're clinging to this secret so tightly because you want to sell it at a good price, right? Tell me, as long as it's not asking me to spare your life, any condition can be negotiated. Seeing that Yun Xiang turned a deaf ear to him, Jin Shiliang said anxiously, don't you have any unfulfilled wishes? Don't you have any relatives who need to be taken care of? Although I can't spare your life, I can help you fulfill your wishes, take care of your relatives, and even help you kill your enemies. I won't tell you this trick, but you can follow me. Whenever we come across similar gambling stands, I will place a couple of bets, Yun Xiang said with his eyes closed. You have to use your own eyes to discover the trick. That's my condition. Although he knew clearly that the other person was using a delaying tactic to delay his death, Jin Shiliang's stubborn personality made him unwilling to be tortured by this secret. Besides, the other person was as weak as a chicken, and it would be as easy as pie to take his life, and the employer hadn't set a time limit for this job, so he was already a bit swayed in his mind. Seeing Jin Shiliang hesitating, Yun Xiang laughed. Could it be that you don't have confidence in your own mind? Jin Shiliang flew into a rage. He picked Yun Xiang up from the ground. All right. I promise you, I don't believe that. After watching a few more times, I still can't see through your little trick. You should pray to God that I will never discover this secret, or else you'll die a miserable death, so miserable that you'll regret being born into this world. As he said this, Jin Shiliang lifted Yun Xiang onto the horse and slowly headed east. 100 miles ahead was Ganzhou, where there were countless gambling houses and gambling stands. He had secretly made up his mind that once he saw through this kid's trick, he would torture him until he was in extreme pain, before letting him die to vent his anger. The city of Ganzhou, standing on the bank of the Yellow River, was the only way for people traveling to and from the western regions, and it had always been bustling and lively. When Jin Shiliang escorted Yun Xiang there, it was almost dusk. The two of them found an inn and only asked for one room to rest. In order to prevent Yun Xiang from escaping, Jin Shiliang would block his acupoints every night, and Yun Xiang had already gotten used to it. Early the next morning, Jin Shiliang dragged Yun Xiang out of the inn. He was already a bit impatient. However, Yun Xiang strolled around leisurely for quite a while, before finally turning into a busy gambling house. Unlike other gamblers, who rushed straight to the gambling tables, he stood with his hands behind his back, looking around casually, and finally stopped in front of a gambling table. The dealer at this table was a young girl in red clothes, which was rare in the gambling house. She was about 18 or 19 years old, quite pretty, and her behavior was bold and unrestrained, completely different from the gentle and refined women in the south of the Yangtze River. Her boldness attracted many gamblers, making this table the liveliest place in the whole gambling house. Come on, place your bets quickly. Once you've made your bets, don't change them. The girl skillfully shook the dice cup and joked with familiar gamblers from time to time. This didn't prevent her from winning more and losing less. In just a short while, hundreds of taels of silver were piled up in front of her. Although she was having a smooth run in the gambling house, there was always a lingering look of worry between her eyebrows. Yun Xiang watched quietly from outside the crowd for the time it took to have a meal, and finally squeezed into the crowd and placed a bet of 1 tael of silver. This table was for betting on big or small numbers, and the rules were simple and clear. When Yun Xiang won the first round, Jin Shiliang secretly praised the kid's luck. When he won 5 rounds in a row, Jin Shiliang couldn't help but open his mouth wide in surprise. He definitely didn't believe that a person could have such good luck, but if he said that this kid was cheating, it didn't seem possible. The gambling tools belonged to the gambling house, and the dealer was from the gambling house. This kid hadn't even touched the gambling tools. How could he cheat? Yun Xian wasn't greedy. After winning a dozen or so taels of silver, he left. When he walked out of the door of the gambling house, Jin Shiliang couldn't help but catch up and whispered harshly, "You must be cheating." "How could I cheat?" Yun Xian asked with a smile. "Brother Jin has been keeping an eye on me, so you must have seen clearly." Jin Shiliang snorted angrily, "I know you're cheating. Next time, I will definitely catch you." Although he sounded tough, he wasn't as confident in his heart as he sounded. "Sir, please wait." Suddenly, a woman's voice came from behind. The two of them turned around and saw that it was the young girl in red who had been shaking the dice cup in the gambling house just now. She clasped her hands and bowed to Yun Xian like a man. "I'm Ke Menglan. May I ask your name, sir?" Yun Xiang smiled and said, "Miss, isn't it a bit too presumptuous to stop a stranger on the road and ask for his name?" The young girl in red didn't care about Yun Xiang's reproach at all. People in the martial arts world act freely according to their nature. There aren't so many rules. "I saw your ability to snatch food from the tiger's mouth just now, and I couldn't help but chase after you to pay my respects." Yun Xiang clasped his hands and said, "I'm Yun Xiang. I'm just passing through this place. I'm short of money, so I had to go to your place to borrow some traveling expenses. I hope you'll forgive me, miss." "Don't be so polite, Master Yun." The young girl in red waved her hand generously. "We're open for business, so naturally we're not afraid of others winning money. It's just that I saw you winning every bet, so blatantly, which is a big taboo like eating meat with a tiger. Could it be that you deliberately showed your skills to attract my attention, Master Yun?" Yun Xiang smiled and said, "Miss, you're overthinking it. I was acting recklessly when I borrowed money for the first time. I'm afraid I've made you laugh." The young girl in red looked displeased. "Master Yun, you act calmly and composedly, even in the noisy gambling house. You're as calm as an ancient well, saying that it's your first time borrowing money. Who would believe that? I originally intended to make friends with you, but if you keep me at arm's length, I will have to say goodbye now." Yun Xian didn't expect the other person to be so straightforward, which made him a bit embarrassed. He quickly clasped his hands and said, "I was being cautious, which made you misunderstand. I hope you'll forgive me. Since that's the case, could you please come with me for a chat?" The young girl in red made a pleased gesture. "Since you sincerely invite me, how dare I disobey?" Yun Xian said as he followed the young girl in red and walked away. Jin Shiliang quickly caught up a few steps and whispered, what secret codes were you using just now? What does borrowing light mean, and what are eating meat with the tiger and snatching food from the tiger's mouth? Yun Xiang gave a mysterious smile. Brother Jin has to figure it out by yourself. Didn't we have an agreement? If you don't have confidence in your own mind, you might as well take my life now, and save yourself the trouble of racking your brains. The more the other person said this, the more Jin Shiliang was unwilling to admit defeat. Don't be so cocky. I've sworn that I won't hurt your life until I uncover your secrets. But once I figure out what's going on, humph. Following the young girl in red, the two of them got on the carriage by the street. After traveling through half of Ganzhou city, they finally stopped in front of a grand mansion, led by the young girl in red. They entered the gate of the mansion, and came to the outside of a study. From a distance, the young girl in red shouted loudly, "Father, I'm back." A middle-aged man came out to welcome them. He looked at Yun Xiang and Jin Shiliang behind the girl, with a puzzled expression and asked, "Who are they?" "This Master Yun is a master of the art of cheating that I met in the gambling house today," Ke Menglan said, pointing at Jin Shiliang. "This warrior is Master Yun's attendant. His name is she." Suddenly felt a bit awkward as she realized that she had forgotten to ask Jin Shiliang's name. "People call me Jin Shiliang. I've almost forgotten my real name," Jin Shiliang said casually. "Jin Shiliang," the man was a bit surprised. "Are you the famous swordsman, Jin Shiliang from Luoqi Town?" Yes, Jin Shiliang didn't expect his name to be quite well known on the Northwest Road. "I'm Ke Xingdong. Nice to meet Master Yun and Warrior Jin." The man quickly clasped his hands and saluted the two of them, then gestured, "Master Yun, Warrior Jin, please come inside." Inside the study, after the three of them sat down as host and guests, Ke Menglan stood behind Ke Xingdong, while Ke Xingdong kept looking at Yun Xiang. "I wonder where Master Yun is from. Where's your hometown?" Yun Xiang smiled faintly and said, "My ancestral home is in the south of the Yangtze River. Now I'm a wanderer, and have no fixed place to live." Ke Xingdong asked with some suspicion, "Is Master Yun proficient in the art of cheating?" "I wouldn't say I'm proficient, I just know a little bit about it," Yun Xiang replied calmly. "Someone bring the pai gao," Ke Xingdong shouted loudly. In response, a servant immediately brought in a pair of dark pai gao. As soon as Ke Xingdong touched the pai gao, he seemed to transform into a different person. He arranged the pai gao with a dazzling skill, and raised his hand to signal to Yun Xiang, "Master Yun, please." Yun Xiang didn't make a move, but smiled and said, "Boss Ke has arranged the pai gao, using the technique of hiding the beginning and cutting off the end. Isn't it setting a trap for me to fall into?" Master Yun has such sharp eyes. Ke Xingdong hurriedly got up from his seat and bowed deeply to Yun Xiang. The expression on his face had changed from surprise to admiration. Jin Shiliang had also been watching Ke Xingdong arranging the cards with wide eyes just now, but he didn't notice what tricks the other had played. Seeing Yun Xiang expose the other's technique with just one sentence, he muttered rather grudgingly, "He's just a cheater. Why does Boss Ke show so much respect to him?" "What do you know?" Ke Menglan glared at him. "My father's gambling skills are among the best in Ganzhou. For Master Yun to be able to see through my father's technique at a glance, such sharp eyesight, is probably rare in the whole world. No matter how brilliant he is, he's still just a cheater. What's so special about it?" Jin Shiliang said dismissively. Ke Menglan was about to argue again, but was interrupted by Ke Xingdong raising his hand. He didn't pay attention to Jin Shiliang's criticism. Instead, he bowed to Yun Xiang and said, "Master Yun suddenly appeared, so there must be a reason. May I ask Master Yun to tell us what it is?" Yun Xiang smiled and said, "Just now when I passed by your place, I saw a notice of transfer outside the door, but inside the door, the business was booming, and there were many people. It didn't seem like a place that needed to be transferred at all, so I boldly guessed that your place was in trouble. Coincidentally, I was short of money, so I boldly won 5 rounds in a row in your daughter's hands to show my identity. If your daughter was interested, she would naturally come to find me." Jin Shiliang opened his mouth wide in surprise again. Yun Xiang had actually had so many exchanges with others right under his nose, yet he hadn't noticed at all. Jin Shiliang suddenly realized that there were endless secrets about him. Master Yun is truly a miraculous person, sent by heaven. Ke Xingdong was overjoyed. To be honest with you, Master Yun, I'm indeed facing a huge trouble. If I can get your help, I'm sure I can turn danger into safety. Someone quickly prepare the wine. A sumptuous banquet was quickly laid out, and Yun Xiang and Jin Shiliang happily took their seats. After a few rounds of wine, Yun Xiang got straight to the point and asked, I wonder what trouble, boss, he has encountered. If I, Yun Xiang, can be of help, I will spare no effort. If I can't, I wouldn't dare to waste your time either, boss Ke. Ke Xingdong let out a long sigh. To be honest with you, I've been in this business for over 20 years. I've experienced many storms and have a bit of a reputation in Ganzhou, but recently, I've really hit rock bottom. Half a month ago, a young man came to the gambling house. He took the opportunity, while gambling, to flirt with my daughter. My daughter fought back with insults and won all his money. Enraged by this, he angrily threatened to win the entire gambling house. 3 days later, this kid brought a few helpers and won tens of thousands of taels of silver in just one day. I'm ashamed to say that I'm also an old hand who has been rolling around on the gambling table for many years. I've seen all kinds of scenes, but I just couldn't figure out what tricks he used. After this kid won for 3 consecutive days, I had almost lost all my capital and had to sell the gambling house and admit defeat. Who would have thought that this kid would be so ruthless and threaten that he wouldn't let anyone who dared to take over this gambling house off the hook? With my previous example in front of them, who would dare to take it over? He'll come again tomorrow. I know clearly that is cheating, but I can't catch him red-handed. I can only sit and wait for disaster. Why is he being so ruthless? Yun Xiang asked. He's forcing me to lose my daughter to him to avenge his previous humiliation. Ke Xingdong said angrily. This kid threatened that unless I give Menglan to him, he'll keep winning until I'm completely bankrupt. Humph! Jin Shiliang on the side curled his lips disdainfully and pointed at Yun Xiang. This kid could win several rounds in your gambling house in a row. I think your gambling skills are pretty mediocre. It's normal to be won all your money by others. What do you know? Ke Menglan glared at Jin Shiliang. Master Yun just won a little money by borrowing light. He wasn't cheating as long as he wasn't greedy. Even though we knew he was snatching food from the tiger's mouth, there was nothing we could do. The gambling house is well aware of such means and can control the losses within an acceptable range, but that kid was clearly cheating, yet we couldn't see it at all. Do you want me to expose his tricks? Yun Xiang asked. Exactly, Ke Xingdong quickly replied. When I'm gambling with him tomorrow. If you can expose him, Master Yun, I'm willing to reward you with 1 month's income from the gambling house. Deal. Yun Xiang reached out and clapped hands with Ke Xingdong. Then he immediately got up to take his leave. The big battle is coming tomorrow. I need to rest early. I will ask the servants to prepare a guest room. You can rest in my humble home tonight, Ke Xingdong said. Without waiting for Yun Xiang's objection, he ordered the servants to prepare the guest room and took Yun Xiang there. Just as the two of them walked out the door, Ke Menglan suddenly chased after them. With a flushed face, she bowed gracefully to Yun Xiang. I will leave everything to you, Master Yun. After following the servants to the guest room, Jin Shiliang kept complaining to Yun Xiang. You didn't even ask Boss Ke how the other person operated. You don't even know what they're gambling on. If you can't see through the other person's tricks, won't you harm Boss Ke and also make me be looked down upon with you? Yun Xiang smiled and said, since Ke Xingdong couldn't figure out the other person's tricks, it's useless for us to ask. Tomorrow we can only play it by ear and act according to the situation. He pinned all his hopes on me. A stranger, obviously. He's at the end of his rope and is just trying to make something out of nothing. If I can expose the other person's tricks, that's good. If not, I will have to pay with my life to Ke Xingdong. Hey, your life belongs to me, Jin Shiliang quickly reminded him. Don't worry, I will keep it for you. Yun Xiang laughed and lay down on the bed. Aren't you going to block my acupoints? Since you have to work tomorrow, I will let you off tonight, but don't play any tricks. I'm used to sleeping with my acupoints blocked. Aren't you making me lose sleep? Stop being so ungrateful, even after getting a good deal. Jin Shiliang lay down on the other bed, With his clothes on looking at Yun Xiang across from him, he was full of anticipation for tomorrow's big gamble, and even secretly hoped that this kid could continue to work his magic. 30 Paigao cards were arranged by Ke Xingdong in a dazzling manner, and then pushed in front of the young master in brocade clothes, with an arrogant look on the opposite side. The other person casually glanced at them, and signaled Ke Xingdong to continue. Yun Xiang mingled among the onlookers in the gambling house, and carefully observed his unknown opponent. He saw that the opponent was quite young, no more than 20 years old at most. He was casually fanning himself with a folding fan, and his handsome face showed a sense of frivolity and wildness. He didn't seem to care at all about the big gamble in front of him. Beside him were a middle-aged scholar and an old man with white hair. The two of them were concentrating on watching the Pai Gao, as if they were the real players at the gambling table, behind the young master in brocade clothes also stood 4 Bali attendants. High-S entourage was really quite impressive. Ke Xingdong started to roll the dice and deal the cards. They were playing Big Pai Gao. Each person got 4 cards and could freely combine them into the groups. Then the banker would compare cards with the 3 players. If both groups of cards were bigger, it would be a double win. If one group was bigger and the other was a draw, it would be a single win. If one group was bigger and the other was smaller, it would be a draw. Since they didn't know the opponent's cards in advance, the way of combining the cards required a certain strategy. Getting good cards didn't necessarily mean winning, and getting small cards didn't necessarily mean losing either. However, for some reason, the young master in brocade clothes and his 2 companions seemed to be able to completely see through Ke Xingdong's cards every time. They could cleverly combine their cards to counter Ke Xingdong's, putting Ke Xingdong in a very awkward position. In just a short while, the young master in brocade clothes won thousands of taels of silver while chatting and laughing. Finally, when it was time for a break to have a meal, Ke Xingdong fled from the gambling table as if running for his life. He immediately called Yun Xiang over and repeatedly urged, "Master, Yun, have you noticed anything? If we continue gambling like this, I will really be bankrupt." Yun Xiang didn't answer directly, but asked instead, "Is it always like today, that at the beginning, both sides have wins and losses, and only after a dozen rounds or so does the other side gain the upper hand steadily?" "Yes, it's almost always like this," Ke Xingdong recalled. Yun Xiang sighed, "Judging from the opponent's performance, they must clearly know the cards in your hand, boss, Ke, and they can even see how you combine the cards. No wonder you always lose more than you win." Ke Xingdong shook his head and said, "I had this suspicion at the first, but I picked the cards myself and they were changed every day. If they had made some secret marks on the cards when they took them, it's impossible for them to hide it from me, an old hand in the casino." Yun Xiang sighed and said, "As far as I know, there is a special paint made of phosphorus powder. If a small amount is applied to the back of the cards, others can't see any abnormality at all. Only those with trained sharp eyes can see the extremely faint glow of the phosphorus powder." "Are you saying that they took the opportunity, when taking the cards, to apply phosphorus powder on the back of the cards, and made marks?" Yun Xiang nodded. "That middle-aged scholar is always concentrating on looking at the cards every time you combine the cards, boss. He uses a unique gesture to tell the young master in brocade close beside him, allowing him to make counter combinations against your cards. Although this method can't guarantee winning every round, it has a high chance of winning. Over time, they will surely win in the end." "That's impossible, right?" Jin Shiliang suddenly interrupted. "My eyesight isn't bad either. How come I can't see any marks?" Yun Xiang smiled wryly and said, "Such sharp eyes can't be trained without 20 or 30 years of hard work. Usually, people train such sharp eyes not for gambling, but for practicing hidden weapons. If I'm not wrong, that middle-aged scholar must be a rare master of hidden weapons. However, judging from the opponent's methods, they aren't really sophisticated cheaters. They're just using their special abilities to cheat." Ke Xingdong was overjoyed. "Since Master Yun can see through the opponent's tricks, you must have a way to deal with it." "That's easy." Before Yun Xiang could answer, Jin Shiliang boasted complacently, while patting his chest. Just come to me, Jin Shiliang, and I will definitely help you solve the problem. Everyone was a bit surprised. Ke Xingdong quickly asked, I wonder what clever plan warrior Jin has. It's too simple, Jin Shiliang said with a proud smile. Just change the way of gambling, or change a deck of cards, isn't that okay?